Welcome back to American Society. It's very good to have you with us. We're following the breaking news. President-elect Trump selected Florida Congressman, longtime ally Matt Gaetz, to be his nominee as the next Attorney General of the United States. CBS News investigative producer Michael Kaplan is here. Now, Michael, I want to read to you something that the House Ethics Committee released in June 18th to be specific. It said it was continuing its probe into these matters. Whether Representative Gaetz may have, and I'm quoting directly here, so listen carefully, engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, accepted improper gifts, dispensed special privileges and favors to individuals with whom he had a personal relationship, and sought to obstruct government investigations of his conduct. What's interesting about this release in June is it followed a preliminary investigation the Ethics Committee did into these matters, and after Gaetz's serial denials of any wrongdoing. Where do things stand?
Well, yeah, the Ethics Committee is still ostensibly doing this review. They said, in that statement you read, they said that the allegations still merit further review. And as long as he is a member of Congress, that review can continue. But if he is confirmed
as Attorney General, it ends.
It ends, yes. And many of those allegations that you just listed off, it stems from a federal Department of Justice probe into Gaetz's wrongdoing, specifically alleging that there was this sex trafficking operation where Gaetz attended a drug-fueled and sex-fueled party, among other things, and allegedly had sex with an underage girl when she was underage. Now, he's denied all those allegations, as you mentioned. The Department of Justice probe was eventually dropped.
Meaning no charges were filed.
No charges were filed.
Against Gaetz.
Yes, but, he routinely decries himself as a victim of government weaponization.
Of a justice inquiry.
And this is...
Was anyone related to that case in any way charged or implicated criminally?
Well, one of his associates, a former Seminole County, which is the county that Orlando...
Seminole County, Florida,
yes. Seminole County, Florida tax collector, pled guilty to sex trafficking charges and is currently sitting in prison for that. And there's extensive reporting, including from CBS News, about Venmo transactions that occurred between Greenberg and women who...
Greenberg is the person you just mentioned.
Yes, the tax collector, and women who attended these parties. And multiple women have come forward to testify not only to the Ethics Committee, but as part of that now dropped DOJ probe. And a lot more detail will be scrutinized as Gaetz's nomination moves forward of a defamation case that played out this summer involving Greenberg and the gentleman whose house the party was thrown at. There are some pretty sordid details about sexual misconduct that have come out as part of that defamation hearing. And again, Gaetz has denied all this wrongdoing, but you can see why he may feel like he's a victim of DOJ and the so-called weaponization.
And some of this information may be, and in fact probably will be, forwarded to the Senate Judiciary Committee as part of the confirmation review process. Michael Kaplan, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I want to bring in our panel, Meridith McGraw and Andrew Desiderio. Meridith is a national political correspondent for Politico. Andrew, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Punchbowl, for those of you who may not be aware, specializes in all matters Capitol Hill and does so quite well. So, the two of you, let's just go over the day's events, starting with Matt Gaetz. Meridith, your reaction.
This was a shocking pick by Donald Trump today. We'd seen how over the course of the past few days, he's been rolling out his cabinet appointments, and he's been holding meetings down at Mar-a-Lago for some of his, biggest appointments, whether it's, the Secretary of State, which was announced today as officially as being Marco Rubio. A lot of the appointments so far, I hadn't heard too many grumblings from people in D.C. about them, but I will say today with the rollout of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence, and in particular with Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, it has really sent shockwaves on Capitol Hill. You were just outlining some of the ethics probes that Gaetz has been under. He is incredibly loyal to Donald Trump and will certainly shake things up in Washington the way that Trump would like. That's if he is able to get confirmed by the Senate. And I think that's one of the biggest questions here, is if Gaetz or some of the people that he's put forward so far are even Senate confirmable.
Andrew, your thoughts on whether Gaetz is Senate confirmable based on the early read?
Yeah, it's the question of the day, question of the moment right now. It's looking uncertain at this point because you've got senators, even ones who are traditionally very deferential toward Donald Trump, are expressing pause or at least not full-throatedly supporting this nomination like they have with others. I will note that senators who sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, like Tom Tillis, for example, said pretty bluntly that it's going to be really difficult when it comes to the whip count to get Matt Gaetz confirmed. So we'll have to wait and see at this point. But I do think it's notable that these more controversial picks were rolled out just hours after Senate Republicans quite triumphantly voted for a new Senate Republican leader who's going to be the majority leader come next year, John Thune, the Republican, of course, from South Dakota, who's currently the #2 Senate Republican. He suddenly now has a lot on his plate, and his message coming out of that leadership election this morning was, I'm going to prioritize the confirmation of President Trump's nominees. Now, up until that point, we had heard about folks like Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz being named as National Security Advisor. Of course, that's not a Senate confirmable position, but something that national security hawks in the Senate were very pleased by. So up until that point, you heard Republicans very, honestly, quite happy with some of the nominees and some of the picks that Donald Trump has put forward so far. And then, of course, in the hours after that leadership election, Trump kind of sprung all of this on them. And they are in a state of shock right now. And some Senate Republicans I'm talking to have said have said privately, of course, that they are planning to talk to Donald Trump about this and try to sort of talk him off the ledge.
Meredith, about Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and this Department of Government Efficiency, what are you hearing and what are your expectations?
Well, this is an idea that Donald Trump has been talking about with Elon Musk for a while now, both publicly and privately. And over the past week since Donald Trump was elected, Elon Musk has really been at his side down at Mar-a-Lago. He traveled with him to Washington today and has really become a kind of top consigliere for Trump. Same with Vivek Ramaswamy, who's been down in Palm Beach as well. And their idea for this is to basically crowdsource how they might be able to cut government inefficiencies. And they said that they're going to be taking recommendations from people, and then it will exist as sort of a panel where they can put forward recommendations. But I will note, even though Elon Musk has talked about potentially cutting $2 trillion from the budget, which is an incredible amount of money considering what the government budget actually is, and Vivek Ramaswamy has talked about gutting parts of the federal government. Ultimately, the purse strings belong to Congress. And so my understanding, at least from the sketchy details that it seems like we're learning about now, is that they will put forward some recommendations of ways and places where they can cut some waste.
And Andrew, you know this, Meredith knows this. I'll just let the audience be reminded of it. 2/3, if not more, of the federal government's budget flows through the following: entitlements, defense, and payments of interest on the national debt. There's not much left for Elon and Vivek to pick over.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And this was actually a topic of discussion during a closed-door candidate forum that Senate Republicans had last night with the candidates for the leadership, which, of course, were John Thune, John Cornyn, and Rick Scott. And as I mentioned earlier, John Thune ended up winning that race and will be the Senate Majority Leader next year. But during that conversation, the three candidates were pressed specifically on this point, on finding ways to cut government spending, finding ways to use what's called the budget reconciliation process next year, whereby You only need a simple majority in the Senate to achieve that, right? And at the same time, they're talking about spending additional dollars on things like border security, on building a border wall, which is what Donald Trump has for years sort of campaigned on. And so at the same time as they're talking about cutting government spending, and there's not much to choose from there in terms of the non-mandatory side or the discretionary side, as we call it, at the same time, they're looking to hike spending in certain areas when it comes to specifically the border and the construction of a border wall.
Meridith McGraw and Andrew Desiderio, thank you very much for your time.